Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, hope everybody's doing well um, on this sunny day. Today's my birthday, and there are times when I've wondered what it was like the day I was born. Was it sunny? What was going on in the world? Um, what was going on in my parents' life? You know, what were their struggles, or what were the things that they were dealing with? Things like that. I often sit and wonder. You know. What was going on the day I was born. Um, I often sit and have conversations with my sister, um, my younger sister, and I tell her I can remember the day that she was born and the day I went to the hospital with her dad to pick her up, and how excited the rest of us, my other brothers, were um, when she got home. And I tell her about how we put her in her crib, and there was a bee flying around, and we were all worried that she was going to get stung. And probably the reason why I told her that, because and I hope my sister doesn't mind me telling this story, that there were a lot of times that she felt that she didn't fit in with the family because she had a different father. And so I share with her about how her brothers were anticipating the day that she came home, and that we were excited, and how we watched out for her as we were trying to get that bee away from her so that she didn't get stung. And it's funny how you remember these things, and that was a long time ago. But I can remember, the day I was walking down the street with her dad, and that was a long time ago. And how excited I was that I was going to go get my baby sister and bring her home, and how my other brothers were excited. So I often wondered what the day was like the day I was born. What was going on in the world? What was going on in my parents' life? I mean, as parents, we don't have to share everything. But, I wish I had the opportunity to talk to my parents and ask them these questions. What was the day like? Was it sunny? Was it raining? Was it windy? Was it cold? What was going on that day? Where did we live? Things like that. So I often spend, time talking to my kids about it, like when my firstborn son was born. It was a hard time for me because I wanted to be the best father I could be, but I really didn't have an example. I guess I shouldn't say I didn't have an example. Later on in my life, I met my dad when I was in high school. And my dad wasn't perfect, but he um, had some characteristics that, he passed on to me. And for that, I'm grateful because they were good characteristics. So I often wonder, I've never really had the opportunity to talk to my grandparents because I didn't know them. I've met my grandparents on my dad's side a couple times, and I knew my mom's mother. She was the closest grandparent I was closest to. My grandfather died before I was born, so I've often wondered, those things. I mean, have you ever sat down and thought, gee, I wonder what that day was like? What were my parents going through, or what was going on in their head the day, that I was born? So I often take the time to share with my kids. My older boy was born breech. So that doesn't happen too often. So um, the operating room was full of people. Um, yeah. So, like born breech, that's basically when your legs first. Yeah, so. And then my other son, he wasn't even supposed to be born. We thought we lost him. And so, I share these things with him. Because I can remember, the day his mother came into the doctor's office, and I just happened to be there, and she was having some complications. So the doctor called us in the office and said, I hate, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but your wife's lost a baby, and we need to get her to the hospital. So because of some complications. So, I can remember standing outside the operating room with my pastor. I called him, and we were praying, that my son's mom would be okay and everything would go all right. And the nurse come out and said they found a heartbeat. So I often share these things with my son. How I call him my miracle baby, because he wasn't supposed to be born. So these are the kind of things that we need to talk to our children about. Because at the time I was struggling because I thought that we had lost him. Excuse me. So I share with them that if you didn't believe there was a God, how could you not believe that there wasn't a God when something like that happens? Here we thought we lost him, and then standing there, and the nurse comes out of the operating room and says, we found a heartbeat. So, I share these things with him. How could you not believe there was a God? So, like I say, I often wonder, what was that day like? The day I was born. Because sometimes when we talk to our kids, and then when they get older, they can hold on to these things when they're having a rough time and they feel like giving up. There were times in my life where I doubted myself and I wondered, well, what was my purpose in life? Why was I put on this earth for? So, it might have helped me if my parents would have sat down and talked to me about how happy they were the day I was born and how it gave them great joy. And I could have carried that with me throughout my life. And it probably would have been very helpful for me. Doesn't mean that your kids aren't going to make it if you don't share those kind of things, but it helps. It helps them in their journey to get through the difficult times in life. When you sit and tell them, it was one of the happiest days of my life, the day you were born. Because there might come a time in their life where they feel like giving up. And they think about that conversation that they had with you and how happy you were. And then maybe they may make a different choice in which direction they want to go in their life. So yeah, I just thought I'd make this short because it's very important, and like I said, I often think about that. I mean, they got all these books now that you can look, you can buy them in the store. how much was a loaf of bread the day you were born, what was going on in the world the day you were born, what was invented the day you were born, things like that. I mean, you can find all that out, but that's really not important. Um, the importance is to let your kids know what it was like the day they were born. Where were you living? What were you doing for work? Maybe sometimes we could tell them our struggles. We don't have to go into great detail. Because they may be little right now, but there may come a time in their life when they become parents, and those anxieties and those fears and uncertainty that they have about whether they're going to be able to provide for their family. These are some of the things that, I struggle with as I found out I was going to be a father. So these kind of things that we need to talk to them about, because here I am now. Everything turned out fine. But if we talk to our children about those kind of things, then they'll have a better understanding. They say, oh, my dad, my mom went through this. They got through it, so I'm going to get through it. So there's reasons why, we need to do these things. Talk to our kids about that. Then they're not just sitting there wondering, okay, what do I do? They can go back and say, okay, this is what my parents did. Some kids don't have that opportunity. I didn't have that opportunity. Okay, what would my dad do? What would my mom do in this situation? So that's why it's important to talk to our kids about that. Yeah, so anyways, I thought I would just make a short one here. And, if you are celebrating a birthday today, happy birthday. I hope you have an awesome day, everybody. And we'll talk to you soon.